when I would have used it if I was on the city council, and that's the Seacoast Inn. For 15 years, the owner of the Seacoast Inn put off the city's best interest. For 15 years, he's been talking about redevelopment and making his new development a go-to site for the city. We are seeing it come down. Hopefully it goes up. But I definitely would not have waited 15 years, and I would have eminent domained it a long time ago because it's in the city's best interest. He broke many promises. That's just a little example of when I would use it.
Thank you. Mr. Spriggs.
I think eminent domain has its purposes and its uses, but they really do need to be limited, and they need to be clearly in the interest of the public. This is an area probably more than as much as any where we need to make sure there's government transparency, that public input is obtained, and that we get a sense from our community as to what they really want as part of our development. Also, I don't think eminent domain should be used on really viable businesses that are creating vibrancy for the community. If there's a blighted area or businesses that aren't succeeding or that have failed, or an area that really does cause problems in the community that's commercial, then I think that's when we ought to be looking at it, but not beyond that.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
Can I repeat what Mr. Spriggs said word for word? I think he pretty much covered it. I think I'd have to agree with him on that, just about word for word.
Thank you. Ms. Welsh?
Well, I'd have to use my own words on this one because I don't believe that eminent domain should be used very often at all. I am originally from Boston, and people have owned properties in Boston for many generations. To come in and take someone's business or whatever it is, that is crossing a line that it makes me very uncomfortable. I know it's a small business owner in this community that is fighting in eminent domain right now that I have read about. That concerns me because if you have put your heart and soul into a business as a business owner for many, many years and the city comes in and doesn't like what it looks like, maybe the city should help the business to become better, but to take it away doesn't seem to be the right authority.
Thank you. Mr. Bibby?
I agree with Tim. If eminent domain should have been used, should have been against that hotel. And then I agree with Jennifer that using it against family businesses has been here a long time. And I know she pointed out one issue, and one issue that really bothered me, and I grew up going to this place, was the pet shop. We don't have anything like that in IB anymore. That was like one of the greatest places to go when you're a kid, to walk in there, look at the fish, look at the bird. Those people were like the nicest people in the world. They would let me just sit there and wander around, not yell at me like, get out of here. But as soon as I would leave, they'd always say, see you next time, young fella. I mean, that, I don't believe the eminent domain should be used against, long-time business. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bilbray?
I believe in eminent domain as long as it's used responsibly. Like everybody says, the Seacoast Inn, it's been sitting here for 10, 15 years, and I believe the city should have taken it over a long time ago. It's not in the best interest of the city to have the Seacoast Inn not up and running, especially for a business aspect. So as long as it's done responsibly and not abused, and listening to the citizens of the city, I believe it's a viable tool.
Thank you. Ms. Bragg?
Thank you. I think the last time we used eminent domain was on Seacoast Drive, and it was for the betterment of the community, and that's why we now have Dunes Park. I don't know if any of you remember that, but the lines have been drawn as far as eminent domain is concerned. The way I look at it, though, is that eminent domain is a tool in your toolbox, and when you're a leader, and you're planning out your development in your community, it's a tool that you can use and I'm going to ask you a question. How fair do you think it is for somebody to hold out, knowing that a project is coming, and they just hold out and just to remind you that the businesses at 9th and Palm were all offered relocation assistance. They can relocate. It's one of the things that the city has made sure that our consultant assists the businesses with. So it can be used, it needs to be used judiciously. I think our community has done that. It's not something that a leader likes to use, but it's nice to have it in your toolbox.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
Thank you. I believe in intimate domain as long as it's used in a proper manner. You know, if the small business or the business is comfortable to a new location and they're assisted as the city does currently right now, and at the same time, it's comfortable for the city too. But intimate domain needs to be used to a certain extent and not to its full course.
Thank you. And Mr. Fisher.
Kind of an interesting question. As I mentioned earlier, I live right next to the project on 9th and Palm, so I hope that they draw the line for eminent domain right outside my property line. I do kind of, not to kid around, but I talked to the gentleman over at the pharmacy, and he was going through the process of being kicked out of his place. I agree with Ms. Bragg. We can't have resident or business owners holding up a project. They knew it was coming. However, the way in which his situation was handled, I do not agree with. I may not know all the facts. I only read what's in the paper, just as many as you do. However, I do not agree with the way it was handled and the way that it continues. And I really hope that it doesn't hold up in court too long and there comes to an agreement between the two parties that this project goes forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next question will be led off by Mr. O'Neill. Why would you be the best candidate to take on the challenge of balancing the budget?
Wow. As being a candidate, we were given a disc, a CD, that had the 5-year projection for this city. And it's dismal at best. When it comes to balancing budget, the way I look at it is pretty common sense. If I have $10 in my wallet, I know I can't go spend 20. The city needs to look at some of the consultants that it uses, some of the engineering studies. There are better ways that they can get things done by partnering with nonprofits, for example. A lot more can get done using some of their backs than city money. And just as the mayor is going to tell you, I'm sure, live within your means, and I agree with that 100%.
Thank you. Mr. Spriggs.
This is an issue I've had to deal with quite a bit in other contexts, and nobody looks forward to having to be in an environment where there's not enough resources to do what all the people want to be done, what your constituents want to have done, etc. But we do need people who have experience dealing with these issues, and they involve trade-offs, they involve values, and this is where we need to understand what our community values the most, what are the things that we place in the highest priority. This is something that I would really pledge to do as a council member, is try to understand what our community values. If it's fire and police protection, then we cut other things before we cut that. That just as an example. I've had to make these kinds of judgments and solicit values at the university for the last 10 years as a budget manager in student affairs. And it's not easy, but there is a way to go about doing it, and participation is necessary.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor.
That's a tough question. It's all about choice. It's all about choice and what it is we want. I agree with the statement about $10 in your pocket, you can't go spend 20. I think our nation's been ruined by overspending, and it's coming to a big halt because of it. Again, it comes to detail, and the decisions that are made, we have to look at the cause and the effect. There was that issue with the alleys, redoing the alleys. We went out and spent $800,000 surveying the alleys, and then put it to vote. I think we should have put it to vote first, and then we wouldn't have had to spend $800,000 surveying the alleys, things like that. I mean, you have to look at what could happen, and that's all part of the decision making. And these are the things that keep the money around and going to the right places.
Thank you. Ms. Welsh.
I agree that we need to look at where we're putting our money and who's consulting with us and who's getting the money. It seems that we've committed, it looks like $22 million in RDA bonds. It seems that we'll end up having to pay for those. And making the checks is fun, but actually paying for the checks can be tough. I have to make my budget work. I own businesses and I have to employ people. It's very important to live within your means. It's very important to figure out new ways of attaining revenue before you start spending the revenue. The Seacoast Inn is a very interesting thing to me because I spent many anniversaries there with my husband, and it was a little rough, but I don't know when we started crossing the line to go into redeveloping with our public money.
Thank you. Mr. Bibby.
Everybody made a lot of good points up here. It is going to be tough trying to run the budget, and I wouldn't want to cut any essential services, especially police and fire department. Those are a must, and then other special programs. Being a mayor, I would definitely work really close with my city manager because he's basically be my right-hand man. And like I said, it's going to be tough, but like we have to look at certain things that we don't think is necessary, like consultant fees, which is probably a must. Sometimes I think we spend too much money on that. But it's going to be tough to run the budget, especially